All righty. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. So welcome to tonight's webinar, where all you need to know about the updated IDP and finishing out the year with our current policy. My name is Stephen Dominy. I use he, him, and his pronouns and serve as the chair of the National Standards Committee. In a moment, we will have members of our committee introduce themselves, so as they will be our experts sharing knowledge with you all tonight. We will talk about our IDP and the process components. We will talk about the virtual training and what does that look like, or describe that for you. We'll do the guide overview. There is an IDP guide to help assist chapters and others as they navigate things. And then we'll lead into our best practices for IDP, our certification, and then end with any questions that you may have. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Brother Emily Kendall to give us the information for next.
All right. So we're going to start by going over an overview of the process of what is the new process in the IDP, the individual discipline policy, so that you have a sense of what happens after an incident occurs and an allegation submitted. So the process is described in detail in the IDP, and the guide that we'll talk about tonight also walks you through it. But this, again, is just a really quick overview. So after an allegation is submitted to the chancellor and the standards committee review that allegation at their next scheduled meeting, and they're going to use that time to determine is the allegation valid. In some cases, if the allegations include information that's sexual harassment or misconduct or assault related, or if the chapter doesn't have enough members of the standards committee trained, the chancellor would then forward the allegation to the provincial standards committee chair, and is expected to inform the chapter standards committee and the executive committee about the allegations. And in that case, the provincial committee will maintain contact with the chapter president and the chancellor regarding the process. So that's an aside in the instance where the allegation might be of that nature. But for standard things that might be submitted to a chapter, if the allegation is validated by the standards committee, the chancellor would then hold an administrative meeting with the respondent. And in that meeting, which is meant to be an informal conversation between the respondent and the chancellor, the respondent might choose to take either responsibility for all the allegations, some of the allegations, or none of the allegations. And that's going to determine how things proceed from there. So if there ends up being a hearing, if the respondent does not accept responsibility or partially accepts responsibility, then the hearing would be scheduled for a time that's convenient to the respondent, the chancellor, the hearing advisor, and the additional members of the standards committee who are going to serve on the hearing panel. It's not necessary for the complainant to be present. However, if they wish to be, that should be taken into consideration. And that hearing has to be held within 21 days of the administrative meeting that the chancellor had with the respondent. So from there, after the hearing, if the person is found responsible, then the hearing panel is going to need to determine what the behavior correcting measures should be. Behavior correcting measures are intended to address the root issue of what the individual has been responsible for violating. So for instance, if somebody misses a community service event, it doesn't make sense to have them go to the Career Center and work on the resume as their behavior correcting measure. And there are resources that will be discussed in just a minute. And that includes a guide similar to our current IDP manual. And that guide provides some thoughts on creative behavior correcting measures for a variety of violations. So that's again, a really quick overview of what happens. I didn't go over every instance that's in this chart, but you can see the breakdown of how things might proceed. And again, for full detail, you'll want to read the IDP, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what the process is like. So I will go ahead and hand over the mic to Chris to talk about virtual training.
So with the new standards hearing process, all of the training will be available in the Delta State University soon. It'll take about 30 minutes to complete the training, and you are able to start and stop it just like everything else within Delta University. We are working on it, and everything has been passed off to our partnership, so our partner to finalize it. So everything within our control is done. And then since the training and the certification is actually tied to your hub login, it is recommended for brothers to do it separately, alone, as opposed to doing it during a chapter meeting, which has been a previously asked question. Any brother can take the training. However, there are brothers who are required to actually complete the training. So as far as who is required, very simply, the chancellor is required as the head of the chapter standards committee. The committee can only be comprised of brothers who have taken and completed the training. So everyone who wants to be part of the chapter standards committee should complete their training. And the provincial standards and the national standards committee must also complete the training. It is recommended that the assistant district director, if there is one, completes the training, as well as the district director, the chapter advisor, the hearing advisor, the regional vice president, provincial vice president, board members, and staff all are recommended to take the training just so that they have a general understanding of the new process. With that, I will turn it over to Hunter for more information on the training module.
Yeah, perfect. Also, apologies for the background noise, but as Chris said, it is about a 30-minute training module. There's going to be a variety of topics that are covered. This is just going over everything that you need to know so you get your chapters on the right foot. That first part is going to be terminology. What may some of the past terms been? What are going to be the new terms that you're seeing? What is the policy and process of this? As we already covered, you have the allegations, you have the administration meeting, you have the appeals, a lot more in-depth conversations on what each of those steps means and how it can affect your chapters. At one of the bottom portions of the training is going to be the resources and best practices. This is just supporting your chapters in ways that we as a committee might have thought might come up, and how to best take those actions. But as we said, this is a live document. Things can come up and you can adjust from there. At the end of this training module, similar to the CDL leadership training, so if you have taken the CDL in the past, you'll have a comprehension quiz at the end. This is 5 questions just going over what was in the training and making sure you have a solid understanding. Those that have completed the online training, there's going to be a report sent out. So having those leaders that are trained, making sure there's a list, and when you are on the hearing committee and say that you need a panel, you have a pool of people to choose from. Something to mention is that the hearing advisor, it is recommended that they have training, but it is not required for them. So this is just a quick overview. If you do have questions about the training, it is going to be coming out sometime soon, and just a great way to get started out on the foot. We do recommend that all of you complete it before that July 1st, before all that policy comes in. And I'll hand it off to the next speaker.
And as we look to what resources are in place for our collegiate and alumni members, we do have an in-depth process guide. For those of us that have been in the fraternity for a number of years, we might remember the current IDP chapter operations manual. And the new process guide is a similar support system and similar in structure. Information will be used as a guide with best practices incorporated. So we're not simply dictating these are the exact processes that must be followed that are not in policy, but rather letting chapters use best practices which are in the guide to dictate how they'll follow the process. And we also want to empower our chapters for conducting hearings. So we are not in the guide listing off, here's exactly the run through of how a hearing has to run, but rather seeking to empower our chapters to make those decisions with the hearing advisor and other volunteer support on the ground. And the process guide will be available on the DSP website for all to access at a date coming soon. And as we look to what topics are located within the guide, we have terminology. So for the newer folks to the process, it will break down the changes in language that we have with respondent and other terms, as well as information on the chapter and provincial standards committees, the process all the way from when an allegation is submitted to how a hearing is reported and the results of that. Also talking about the appeals process, best practices, as we'll talk about later on. And then the important parts for some of our chapters are the sample letters that one can use and sample hearing documents. Again, recognizing this is not what the central office is saying has to be sent out, rather helpful information from volunteers that have been through the process that will supplement what a chapter might want to use. And with that, we'll pass it back over to Emily.
All right, so hopefully you're getting a sense that the IDP guide is going to offer some like best practices, recommendations, and really meant to be just what it is, a guide. And so one part of what's in the guide are some best practices in general. And so I'm giving you just a snapshot of a few best practices here. So one that's discussed in the guide is that the best alternative to hearings is to resolve them amicably between the members. So as simple and kind of cheesy as it might sound, trying to avoid a hearing in the first place. So for instance, that might mean helping ensure members are set up for success in paying financial obligations. We all know that dues non-payment is a big reason for trials. So as we move forward in this new IDP, we really want to encourage chapters to be thinking about how they can avoid issues with members not paying dues. So consider, can you make your dues more affordable for all members? Or can you help ensure the cost of membership is fully explained so that potential members know what they're getting into? Are there easy payment plan options? And then another reason we know that trials happen a lot is non-attendance. And so moving into the new IDP, can you consider ways to ensure that members attend chapter events, such as avoiding chapter attendance policies that can only be enforced by hearings? So maybe that means your attendance policy could be more incentive-based rather than focusing on punishing non-attendance. Or could you do things that motivate members to attend chapter and required events? Also consider, are your events interesting to the chapter? Are there ways to make sure that your events are relevant so that members are attending? Delegating responsibilities to every member in the chapter can help to also get more engagement and buy-in so that attendance is a little bit easier. And having options of events that could be considered makeup events for those who miss something that might be required. So again, as cheesy as it might sound, really trying to avoid having any hearings in the first place can help make your chapter a lot stronger. Another best practice that's discussed in the guide is that the purpose of behavior correcting measures, which I mentioned earlier when going over the process, is really to assist the respondent if they're found responsible for an allegation. So really the behavior correcting measures are not meant to be a punishment. They're meant to be something that helps that member to avoid having issues in the future. So for instance, if your member is found responsible of an allegation of non-participation, maybe their behavior correcting measure is that they're helping to organize some kind of a chapter event, something that would get them more engaged moving forward. Or if the allegation was about financial delinquency, could they help to organize a fundraiser that would help with paying their debt toward the chapter? Or would that fundraiser even be able to help the chapter to have lower dues moving forward? So again, this is just a snapshot of some of the best practices. The IDP guide is a really great resource for seeing some more. So I will pass the mic back over to Chris to talk about certification tracking.
So as we roll out the new process, and then even beyond that, the assistant district director, the district director, and RVP will all receive a semi-weekly report of chapters who they're responsible for, who have not, who do not have 4+ members having completed the training. So as a reminder, you're required to have the chancellor and 3 other members as part of your chapter standards committee, how each chapter manages that is completely up to them. But from a leadership perspective, we do want to make sure people are informed if the chapters don't have that minimum of 4 people. So there will be a semi-weekly report showing that. Beyond that, if you just want to be able to look at it, there will be reports available in the hub. Chapter members will be designated, marked, as well as leaders, because the training again is tied to their hub login. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Stephen.
So again, if you have questions, recognizing the fact that your local leadership, so your district directors, assistant district directors, your regional vice presidents, asking them questions to the National Standards Committee. If you email nationalstandards@dsp.org, you're directly in communication with me. And then our central office staff liaison is Tyler Havens, the Director of Chapter Services. So you can email him at havens@dsp.org. And you can also email the central office through hub@dsp.org. So with that being said, who has questions? I believe there's already a question in the chat, so.
There is a question in the chat from Madeline. When will the certification tracking begin?
So as soon as our training is ready to rock and roll, which should be coming soon, we will be, once we have that set up, we will be ready to rock to begin that tracking process. So as soon as people have completed the training, we will be able to begin that tracking.
And our next question, when is the ideal time to start training?
As soon as the training is available, I would suggest doing it. We're moving and grooving to make sure that you are ready for success for July 1, so that there is a smooth transition. So please note that it will be available before July 1, because we transition on July 1. So we definitely want to do our best to support that.
And Steve, I think you answered the next question that we have is, can we expect the training in the hub for chancellors by July 1st? I'll actually, as the National Standards Committee said, it is everything that we can do within our power has been completed, and we are just waiting for it to be uploaded. So the answer to that, my hope is yes, and that it would be significantly before July 1st. We're just waiting on our providers. I'll ask the next question here from Mason. Can the members of the Standards Committee be selected from within the chapter's executive board, or does it need to be open to the whole chapter to apply?
So interesting. So there's really not a method that says that, like for an application, every member of your chapter can technically go through the training. So you as a chapter will get to designate how that is. I would highly recommend that you have diversity of thought, diversity of individuals, and not just members of your chapter executive board serving on the Standards Committee. Reminder, Standards Committee is the broader picture, while the hearing committee, the hearing panel, is a select group of those people that are part of the Standards Committee. So recognizing you may have time conflicts and other things that factor into who's selected for that panel. So recognizing it's important to know there are 2 components to this.
All right. The next question we have from Lexi: do members completing the IDP training have a required quiz score to officially complete the training?
That is a great question. I do not believe that at the current time we have indicated such a score, but we will get back to you. Lexi, thank you for that insight, because we will make sure that we discuss that at our next meeting.
All right. Everyone, please keep popping any questions that you have into the chat. I've got one more here currently. A question that was at a regional president training from the Southwest region. Should presidents be on the Standards Committee? Should it be made up of exec members or otherwise? So partially answered, but Stephen, I'll let you reiterate a few pieces.
And just a quick thing, I went back and double checked everything. So yes, to your question previous, Lexi, we are encouraging that we need our chapters to be at 100%. It's a comprehension. We need this process to be thorough. So 100% is kind of our expectation. So I promise you, the questions are not complicated. I think I could probably give it to my 21-year-old brother, and who's not a Delta Sig, and he probably would pass it. It's supposed to be intentional to make sure that you understand what's going on. But back to Sarah's question. Sarah, it's really up to the chapter. I do think that this is the delineation or delegation of power here. I don't think it's necessarily the best practice to have the president serve on the standards committee. Can they serve on the standards committee? Absolutely. But I think the reality is you can have any type of makeup. Yes, some chapters may have executive board members on there, and that's great. But I do want to say that sometimes it's best for the chapter structure to allow opportunities for others to be engaged. This is a great opportunity for the general membership to be involved and invested in the process, so that we can move this forward. But again, it's up chapter to chapter. There will not be a prescribed method of who has to serve on the committee.
Next question. Thank you, Lexi, for popping all these in. These are great. If multiple members are interested in serving on the standards committee, how does a chapter select members that participate in a hearing? Is it random, or does the chancellor get to select?
To be honest with you, if I had to take a wild guess at this answer, I'm not really taking a wild guess. I have deductive reasoning for this. I would say that the chancellor is involved in figuring this out, but I would also say it probably has a lot to do with scheduling. I think it has less to do about being selected and more to do with the scheduling process. Who's available, who can assist in making sure that they're available for the hearing. So I would prioritize the scheduling process and less about making sure that A, B, and C members are the ones serving on the panel.
All right, our next question comes from Emma. How frequently do volunteers, assistant DDs, DDs, RVPs, etc., need to renew their training?
So at this time, those volunteers, once you have done it, you are, at least for this moment, are good for the biennium. We will continue to navigate and monitor this process. But for the moment, that is where we're at with this training.
So to clarify, once the training is available, as soon as you take it, you're going to be good through the 23 to 25 biennium. The National Standards Committee will reevaluate what the needs are once we hit the 25 to 27 biennium. Correct?
Correct. Thanks, Tyler.
You bet. Shiv, next question. When do we need to select committees by, and do we need to submit document names? I'm going to steal this one from you, Stephen, because this is a process question that really comes from central office. Shiv, you will want to have your committees in place probably one of your first couple of meetings at the beginning of the school year. Though the policy goes into effect July 1, we don't anticipate chapters conducting any hearings or anything like that during the summer. So as you are getting your year started, that is probably when you want to start putting your standards committee together. The only name that you will need to submit is your chancellor, just as you do now. As far as the standards committee individuals, that reporting that Stephen and Emily, Chris, Adam, and Hunter all talked about, that will be your documentation of who is able to serve on a hearing panel and is trained per the fraternity guidelines. All right, I'm going to go to Aaron's question here. Can we touch on trials or hearings regarding non-standard allegations such as poor, disrespectful member behavior, Are those more sensitive and subject to the chapter? Are there additional practices that need to be applied?
So again, I think, Aaron, great question. I think it really depends on the behavior. There are things around hazing, sexual assault, certain levels of drugs and alcohol abuse that have a different element to navigate, and those will be navigated with the Provincial Standards Committee. I think based off if you're talking about disrespectful or poor behavior, this still falls in line with the Chapter Standards Committee, and they follow suit of the same process. This actually is in the guide, this kind of, and how to the behavior correcting measures to support that. So once the guide is available, you will be able to see the information on how to not only navigate the process like we would with all the others, but also add on how to support behavior correcting measures.
All right, I've got 2 questions here left in the queue that I'm going to kind of combine. So if there are additional questions out there, please feel free to make sure you're popping those in there. Stephen, these next 2 questions have to do with a chapter president serving as a member of the standards committee or part of a hearing. So just kind of looking for some clarification on, is a chapter president, can they be on the standards committee, but not as a hearing panel member? And then previously, can you just clarify that the president is able to serve on a standards committee, as previously communicated that it was not an option for a president?
Great question. So the reality is this: the chapter president is one that has a lot of responsibility in a chapter. The opportunity that we provide for the standards committee to exist is, again, helping to differentiate, delineate, and delegate opportunities for others to be involved. We recognize that each chapter has unique dynamics. But the reality is the chapter president can be on the standards committee and can be a hearing panelist. However, again, we are saying here it is not the best practice. I think the reality is you want to allow the opportunity for others to be engaged in this process, and the responsibility of having the president to be on that committee and to be involved in the hearing does not allow for that delegation, delineation, and differentiation that needs to exist. But again, case by case on the chapters, because everyone's chapter sizes are drastically different. And so we have to own the realities of those things.
All right. I don't currently see any other questions in the chat. I will, Gianna, we got a couple more coming in. Gianna, I will confirm that, yes, we will make this recording available on Delta Sig University as the materials that our National Standards Committee was discussing throughout this program become available. We will be making those widely known that they are available through a variety of different channels, including emails with links to leaders and chancellors and presidents and advisors and all of the above. So we will make sure that all of these are all in one spot for all of our leaders. So thank you for that question. A couple more coming in here. We've got, since we are establishing standards committees at the beginning of the academic year, when are those other 3 required training videos to be completed?
Are we talking about the 3 other chancellor training videos?
I believe that we are looking at the other members of the committee that the chapter is looking at.
Oh, okay.
You could clarify your question for us, that would be great. And as you are clarifying, I will jump to Faison's question. What is the difference between trials and hearings?
Well, trials were done in either chapter grouping or executive, while a hearing is developed by the standards committee and a hearing panel, which is different people. A general member can be on the standards committee, and the hearing panel is also could be general members, but there's only the chancellor plus 3 that are involved in the hearing panel. And mostly it's a change in terminology, but however, the number breakdown is different. Yes,
All
okay.
right. May has
So-
chimed back in here. Yes, the 3 additional members other than the chancellor.
Yes, so you need to make sure that they've completed the training before they're the ones that are your hearing panel, because you don't want your chapter to be in a situation where you do a hearing, you find out the person's not trained, and then there's a potential for appeal because procedurally your chapter did not follow the expectations when it came to making sure that members of the hearing panel were trained. So I'd highly encourage you to just go ahead and get it done. As soon as you know who those people that are going to be on the standards committee are, go ahead and have them all complete the training so that we can get it done. I think, did we get one more question? I think, yes.
Oh,
The next,
I started talking and I hadn't unmuted myself. So where can I find the current individual discipline policy on the website? If you're talking about the policy that is in effect through the end of June, here you can find it at dsp.org/policies. And for the upcoming one that takes effect July 1 of 2023, right now the best place to find the policy is in our National Policies and Procedures Manual under Discipline of the Individual. And there is a follow-up here, Stephen, from Faison. In what instance when we go to a trial versus a hearing?
you won't go to a trial. Trials will no longer exist in the new iteration. Hearings are the only option that you will have. So you can do an administrative meeting to talk about what the allegations are to decide acceptance of responsibility or not acceptance of responsibility or partial acceptance of responsibility. And then if it goes to hearing, from hearing, you will follow the procedural measures to complete that. There is no longer a trial option after July 1st.
I have a question on that. Hi, I'm May. So for the hearing will only be made up of the chancellor and the additional 3 hearing members and then the persons involved, and that's it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
We believe that this process in its new iteration will help streamline a lot of things and actually cause the chapters to be at ease a little more about completing the expectations on this.
I am not seeing any other questions in the chat here, gang. So if there are additional questions, again, last call on those, or please feel free to unmute and ask the question here directly to Stephen and our National Standards Committee. Oh, Sophia asked, where can we find the presentation? I'm assuming you're asking about this one, Sophia. It will be up on Delta Sig University here in the next couple of days. Additionally, you can find a variety of webinars that we have done surrounding this topic on the DSPCO, so Delta Sigma Pi Central Office YouTube channel. And we will also, like I said previously, as things roll out, we will be putting it directly in the hands of our volunteers as well as our collegiate members that are going to be managing this program. All right, last call for questions. All right, so I want to thank Stephen, Chris, Adam, Emily, and Hunter for joining us this evening to add some more context and some more information regarding our individual discipline policy and process. Stephen, is there anything else that you or the team would like to add before we sign off and this thing takes effect again, July 1, 2023?
Just remember, we're all in this together. We recognize the transition that this will be. So please utilize us to help assist you in making that transition happen, because we know we can do this.
All right. Well, thank you all again. And like I said, we'll get this up as to Delta Sig University soon, and we'll also be resending it out with any additional information as it rolls out. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.